Okay, continuing on with the construction of the impulse engines, I've now connected both boxes together. I've only got the two sets of wires, and they're basically ready now to be connected to the Arduino microcontroller. The reason I want to use an Arduino, I don't want to connect these directly to 12 volts because I want when they go to impulse for it to ramp up, ramp down. Also, I can have some special effects, like flickering effect or whatever when it's at impulse. So I wanted to connect these together separately and not be part of the actual 12 volt bus. The next thing I want to do is actually go up here and drill where I want the mounting hole, where I can begin to route some of the wires down through there and begin to pull more stuff in place. I want to also go and install the fiber optics on the front of the ship and get those in place. So I'm going to go ahead and get all those parts done and drill the hole. Since there's not really anything to see there, I'll be back shortly with an update. Okay, there was some question about exactly how I did my LED with the fiber optic, and what I basically did here is once I had the LED with the fiber installed and epoxied in place, I put the resistor on the positive lead. Then I went back, pulled a piece of heat shrink, shoved it all the way down to the very base of the LED, shrunk the heat shrink, then went back and added a second piece of heat shrink, and then shrunk both of those leads together to form a more compact bundle. That's how I did that. The next thing I wanted to do was go in here and add a piece of styrene to the base of the Ktinga in order to mount the fiber optic above the floor pan, as it would be, of the Ktinga, to make the fiber a bit straighter and a little bit easier to run my wiring underneath it. So I went back and added this piece to where I could put my LED above the base of the models. Okay, made a little more progress here. I've got the I've got the one wire here that I've twisted together, going to the LED that I've got the heat shrink on, and it's resting on top of that block. Then the fibers are splitting on either side from there, going to the front of the ship through holes that I've drilled in the front panel. And when we look on this side, here's the fibers coming through. I need to cut these off to a shorter length, and then once I do that, get them all about a 1/4 of an inch long. Then I want to take my soldering iron, hold it up close to but not touch the fibers, and bloom or mushroom the ends of them so they pass light better. And then once they're bloomed, I will pull them back in place, apply some epoxy, and secure them. And then when I get ready to paint, it'll just be a simple matter of using some masking, a few drops of liquid mask to put on those to cover them up to do that. Okay, so now we got both of the engine blocks together, and onto this wire, which again I've twisted together. It will keep the installation a bit neater. And then inside here we have the LED strips, and then the center hole there for the photon torpedo. Making a bit of progress there. I did have one piece of bad luck on the engine flange here. Okay, I got one side of this fixed basically like I wanted it, with the 2 bars and then that small strip. But the problem I had is the other bar, the other piece like this, was dropped. And of course, dropping is not the problem. Not noticing that it was dropped is the problem. And then when the foot found the piece, instead of me finding the piece, it crushed it. So now I'm faced with trying to get a replacement part or scratch building one of those. Either one of those though is not going to hold up the build. I could roll on until I decide what I want to do about getting this part replaced. Also, went after I got the plastic installed, I went back and run some super glue around the foil. I'm sorry. Once I got this foil installed, I ran some super glue around the edges of it as a little extra insurance to hold those boxes in place. I got my hole here and here for my disruptor banks. So now I'm going to take my other LED assembly with its fibers and provide the lights for those. I'll be back shortly. Okay, now I'm showing this LED. I've got a 150 ohm resistor connected to it. I'll take this piece of heat shrink, slide over the top of it, and then I'll take one piece of heat shrink and slide across both of those. And that's the that's 150 ohm because this is a red LED and it's going to be driven by the Arduino. So that's the reason for that value selection. Okay, now as you can see, I've taken one piece of white heat shrink and put both wires inside that. And remember that the positive wire that had the resistor on it did have a piece of heat shrink over it that went all the way down to the base of the LED. And just put these together like this to kind of hold them a little neatly. Going to twist these two wires here then together like these are, this bundle here, to try to keep the wiring neat as possible as they work. And gonna kind of let that go. That'll be I did test it before I put the heat shrink on it to make sure that it was still working, and it's working great. So now what I'm going to do is go in and start on the disruptor banks and get those in place. Okay, now I went by and I cut the lengths of these fiber optics to all basically the same length. Next step is going to go with my soldering iron, go up close to these and bloom them. I'm not going to do it on camera because I don't want to touch something I shouldn't. Also, the resin is sensitive to heat, so I don't want to get it too close. So I want to touch it, bloom it, / mushroom it, and then get the iron away, go on to the next piece. Okay, I had a piece of scrap fiber, and what I want to do is kind of give a demonstration, if you haven't seen this before, of how relatively easy this is. And what I'm going to do is just take this soldering iron tip and approach that fiber, and I'm not touching it, I'm just getting close. Now, if we look at that fiber, this end now has got a mushroom on it. It's mushroomed out, bloomed out a bit on the end. Okay, now what I've got here is a microphone connector. It has 4 connections. I have both the male and female side. It also has this attached piece of sleeve here that will tighten it onto that to make a good physical connection. But the problem I'm having with it is the fact that I really am not going to use these electrical connections. I'm going to run all my electronics in my base from the ship to the base. That way if I want to change anything at any time, or if there's a problem with the electronics other than the LEDs themselves, everything will be in the base. So I've got to get rid of these. And what I'm going to do, start out with the drill bit, drill this hole out, and then basically go in there with some pliers and pull out the pieces that's remaining. When I'm done, I'll be back to show you how that's going to work. Okay, here's some of the debris I have. Notice that this connector now has been drilled out, and the pins that were in it, once I had a hole through the center of that, I was able to take some pliers and grab a hold of each side of those and squeeze them together, which made them crack through that outer coating there. Now I'm going to go back with a larger bit and drill down through there to remove the rest of the material. Not all of it, but by removing this amount of it, the majority of it, the rest of it will just break right out real easy. Okay, the other half of this was much easier since, as you can see, that hole right there was where a set screw was. Once I removed the set screw, the electronic part with the connectors on it just slid out. Now I do want to do a little more to this. I want to make this central hole a little bigger than what it is now. So what I'm going to do there is just to get a bit to the size I want and drill that out. Okay, the next step I've done is I went ahead and flipped it over once I got this assembly done, and put a rather large hole in the model. Normally I like to make these holes as small as possible, but on this resin model it is fairly heavy, so I do want something that's going to be substantial and be able to hold this model without any risk of the support tube bending or breaking off. So I've kind of went overkill. Okay, I've finished drilling out the mic connector where it's just basically metal now, and I've got the other side where I removed it, and I drilled this bottom out a little larger, and then I went in and filed that smooth, and then took some sandpaper, 220 grit, and deburred it so it's not going to cut you. I did get a little cut there, but that's part of modeling. So this part is basically finished. I'm going to take this part then and use this mic connector. Now that will just barely, oops, wrong direction. That will just barely fit in there. As a matter of fact, it won't go all the way, but I will be able to press fit that in there in place. And then once I get that connector pushed in place, I'm going to take some epoxy, mix some 5-minute epoxy, and epoxy this connector to the base of the model. Then the other side of the connector, of course, that I've got here, will simply mount here, and you can use this portion of it to attach the model. Well, it's hard to do since that other piece is not in there, but you get the idea. This will screw in just like it would to a microphone, and will be a way to attach the model without it actually having to be permanently mounted to the base. It will be able to separate there other than the cable, which is going to be coming out of that. It will be will have a connector in the base that can be removed. This thing will be able to actually pull loose from the base if I need to do so to transport it or do anything else. So that's the idea behind that. Okay, for the mounting pole, I'm going to use this 1/2-inch copper pipe. Now that I've got the one round of tape on there, aluminum duct tape, I'm going to put it in this hole, and basically the duct tape is just going to hold it in place while the epoxy sets up.